Dynasty Corner!
What's up, Brainiacs? Welcome into another episode of the FantasyBrainz podcast. Today, we're bringing you some more post-NFL draft content. We're going to be looking at some NFL running back rooms, looking at how the rookies in the draft are going to really shake out those rooms and what we expect them to look like for next season, especially for some of these day 2, day 3 guys where they're coming in very talented, but you don't know if that talent's actually going to, translate over from the college level to the NFL level and whether or not that draft capital really means anything. So like I said, we're going to be covering about 5 to 6 running backs. So make sure to stay throughout the entire video. Also, make sure to follow us on all of our social medias at LeatherBrainz, and especially make sure to check out our TikTok and our YouTube, LeatherBrainz Podcast. Been posting a lot of great content on there. I'm with my partner, as always, Charlie Chemers. Charlie, any words on this running back class before we get started?
Running backs are the heart of fantasy football, and rookie running backs are the heart of dynasty fantasy football. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone just goes running back crazy. It's a really weak landscape right now of guys that are not rookies. And, there's not that many guys that people want to own in Dynasty outside of the top few. So let's get started here. We're not going to go any guys in the first round. We're going to skip right to the second round and go with the 4th running back off the board in TreVeyon Henderson, who goes 38th overall to the New England Patriots. Charlie, I'll let you take the reins on this first. I know you're very high on TreVeyon Henderson, as am I. So what's your analysis on this landing spot and how this running back room is going to shake out?
Yeah, we both love TreVeyon coming out as a prospect because he's going to get himself on the field immediately in this situation in New England where he's got competition in Ramondre Stevenson. But the way that TreVeyon Henderson is going to get himself on the field right away is because of how good of a pass blocker he really is. He is going to supplant Ramondre immediately as the 3rd down running back, and TreVeyon's going to be consistently on the field as the pass catching option and their pass blocking running back. Now, when you pair that with the great speed that TreVeyon brings, which he's a much faster running back than Ramondre Stevenson. He's a lot lighter. He's a lot more fidgety and a faster downhill runner than Ramondre Stevenson. We might see some explosive contributions from TreVeyon Henderson in terms of fantasy, because we're not going to get much fantasy value out of his pass blocking, but we will when he starts catching the ball and when they start giving him more and more carries. I look for this running back room to, carries wise, at least start with a 65-35 split in Ramondre's favor, at least for the first, 2 or 3 weeks in the NFL, when Ramondre has trouble with fumbles. And we could start to see that go more towards TreVeyon's way, where TreVeyon may be able to carve out 55 to 65% of the carries once we get towards the end of the season. Now, we're going to be looking for TreVeyon with Drake May and a weaker receiver core. I think TreVeyon Henderson could be getting upwards of a 15% target share in this New England Patriots offense, and I think that's where his crazy fantasy value is going to come.
Yeah, it's definitely possible with the receiving upside he has, but he just never showed
Totally.
that consistently to have a lot of catches on a season. Like, we know he can catch the ball, but I just
You
don't
don't need to
know.
do that at Ohio State, though. Like, with the offense that they have at Ohio State, what they're equipped with, having Quinshon too to help spell TreVeyon. Like, I think that him being in the NFL will make him an even better pass catching asset for Drake May and whoever he
Potentially.
has in the
Drake May,
NFL.
though, also, I will say, has never been that big of a check down guy. I'm not saying that he's not going to check down. There are some guys who love to check down, like Bo Nix. And then there are guys like Drake May who are going to try to find the guy downfield as opposed to taking kind of the safer play. And that's what we've seen so far at Drake May in 1 year in the NFL and what he was doing at college at North Carolina. So I like Henderson because he's the big playability, and that's what teams in the NFL like. They like guys that can make, one play touchdown, where Ramondre, you're rarely ever going to see him run for longer than a 30-yard touchdown. If he runs for like a 50-yard touchdown, you're shocked because he doesn't have that breakaway speed. And they excited that extension. What was it? Not this offseason, but last offseason. And a lot of people were surprised by that because he's not that talented. And they're like, for a running back, do you really want to be paying them that much money for a guy who's not that good? And now it's kind of looking like a bad contract, which isn't that big of a deal with, them having a rookie quarterback. But I'm just a little worried about the injuries too to TreVeyon. Like he hasn't been able to sustain himself on a full healthy season since his freshman year in college.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult for Travion in terms of injuries, but I think that going to the NFL, having the training staff around you, it's like injuries are not something that you can just predict. I don't think Travion is an injury prone player. I don't think we should be labeling guys, especially out of college, with that label. And if Travion ends up getting injured at the next level, I mean, he's a running back. Like it's going to happen. But I think that from the perspective that we need to have on Travion is that, I mean, he's healthy right now and he's going to stay healthy for as long as until he
Yeah.
gets injured. Like he gets injured as if he's, more on the field more and playing more snaps and getting involved in the with the ball and everything like that. So I mean, like that's not the worst case scenario.
No, it's not the worst case scenario, but like, I think a good example of somebody in the NFL who I'd be saying this would be similar to is like Kenneth Walker, who like, yeah, he doesn't get injured he
Yeah,
doesn't get injured for like a long amount of time, but like he has those nagging injuries because of his electrifying play style and going up the middle. It's just like some of those guys, those smaller running backs in particular, have those types of injuries that just linger on. So I love Travion. Like you said, the pass blocking ability is going to keep him on the field, and he's the perfect player for the Patriots in terms of this is Vrabel's first year as head coach. They drafted him second round. They don't really have, like you said, a really strong receiver room. So they're going to be relying on that running game a lot. And they're probably going to be playing from behind, which bodes well for him in terms of hitting
totally.
that higher reception market like you were talking about.
There's something to be said about, a coach coming in and bringing in their guys. And, Ramondre has been through a few coaching staffs at this point where Mike Vrabel is going to come in. He knows what he's doing. He's a confident leader. He has removed everyone who has won a Super Bowl in the past with the Patriots from this roster. He is cleaning house. He is making sure that these guys are humble and ready to come in and work hard. And I'm really excited. Mike Vrabel is one of my favorite head coaches in the NFL. I love what he was able to do in Tennessee by implementing an impressive play action game with Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, who I think Ryan Tannehill was playing at the level of a top 5 quarterback in the NFL while he was with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. I really think that this mesh between Vrabel and Drake May is going to be incredible for the Patriots organization, for Drake May, and then for their number one offensive player, which I really think will be Travion Henderson this year. I think he's the most athletic player in their offense right now, and I think he is going to be the focal point. I think Mike Vrabel knows that. They go offensive line in the first round, and then they go and grab their guy, steal him right before the Bears. And I think it's going to be really exciting for Travion Henderson and the whole Patriots organization.
Yep. I have nothing bad to say about Travion. It's just for me, the injuries and is he going to be a better real life back than fantasy back? Like that is very possible in this scenario where he's a terrific back to have on your team, but it doesn't always translate to as big of a workload as somebody else might get, which is different when it comes to fantasy football. So let's move on now to our next running back. This is a kind of a surprising pick to most, but the Broncos selecting RJ Harvey in the late second round. This was definitely an interesting pick because Harvey was not a guy who was profiled to go in the second round. He was looked at, a third round, maybe even day 3 guy. Very, very small back. Only, I think he's standing at 5'8", 5'9", but he is elusive. He had a lot of production this past year and the year before that. And those are all things that you're looking for in a running back, being able to produce at the college level for multiple years, having an early breakout age. And you love to see the fact that Sean Payton is the one who drafted him. This could be his guy. A lot of people are comparing the situation to guys like Kamara and Reggie Bush in past years, but I don't know if we can go that far seeing the play style that he is, but we've talked about him before. He could be a very elusive Devon Achane type back for the Broncos. For, like I said, a Bo Nix check down offense, which is what they like to do.
Yeah, you get a lot of slack, honestly, when you have a Hall of Fame head coach where RJ Harvey wasn't on people's boards, really. They weren't expecting the Broncos to go and get a guy like RJ Harvey. But then
Mm-hmm.
when a guy like Sean Payton takes someone like RJ Harvey, everyone kind of like their ears perk up and they're like, wait, what just happened again? And then we start reevaluating and we start looking into, what has Sean Payton done in the past? Because we know he's going to go out there and look to run the ball. We know he's going to involve one running back as a really high-end pass catcher. Like, that is what Sean Payton's offense really provides for fantasy football, is there's going to be a running back that is going to catch a lot of passes
Mhm.
probably. Like, even in all of Javonte Williams' woes as their running back, he was still being able to get sometimes, 6, 7 targets a game as not a traditional pass catching running back. So
Yeah.
that just speaks to how well of a mold RJ Harvey could fit into this offense. Now, if he is everything that Sean Payton believes he is, RJ Harvey is going to be a really, really good fantasy football running back. Now, it is tough to now we have to decipher between the whole dynasty community didn't really see RJ Harvey as this really good fantasy back before the draft, but now that Sean Payton, someone who is very trusted by the fantasy community, sees that, people start getting on board. I mean, RJ Harvey is probably the biggest post-draft riser from like most people's pre-draft rankings. So I think there's still going to be a little bit of a split in the offense. I don't think it's all of it's going to go to RJ Harvey, but it should be really interesting. How do you think this backfield is going to end up shaking out?
Well, I think, look, people respect Sean Payton, but he was also the next running back to go off the board. So of course, most of the time, that guy is going to be favored to be the next running back taken in fantasy football. But I'm curious to see what happens with Audric Estime now in this
Yeah,
offense because
because that's another Sean Payton back still.
exactly, Sean Payton did draft him last year in what I think was the 4th round, and so they get him, and he profiles more as the between the tackles, bowling ball style running back. So I don't think Estime is going to be anything crazy in fantasy, but there is a world where the Broncos are a really good offense. Maybe not this year, but next year if they pick up a really good receiver. And then Estime walks into potentially, if he is that goal line back for them, 8 to 10 touchdowns because of how powerful their offense can be. And I think he could be a little bit of a sleeper going into it unless Harvey comes out and just dominates and he's just the 3 down back, which would be insane for anyone who gets him, assuming he goes in the second tier of these dynasty players.
Yeah, Estime will still have the goal line probably no matter what, but I see it shaking out. Probably Audric Estime getting 40% of the carries to 45%, and then you've got Harvey who's probably going to get 30 to 35, and Jaleel McLaughlin who's going to take whatever's left over because they are going to run all three backs in this offense. They like them all, but RJ Harvey is going to be given an opportunity to prove it in the passing game, on third downs, and in between the 20s when you could break away for big runs. I mean, Audric
Mhm.
Estime is going to be their ground and pound guy. Everything inside of 3 yards is going to go his way. I don't see Sean Payton, going away from his guy who he picked out of USC and Audric Estime, who was a really good running back there. Everyone thought that Audric Estime was going to supplant Javonte Williams throughout the year, and he began to do that. And so there's no question in my mind that Audric Estime won't be involved for the Denver Broncos in 2025. The only question now is how involved can RJ Harvey get himself, because he is still a rookie and it is going to take some time to acclimate to the NFL.
Right. He also might just not be that good, and people might
Right,
have
he
been
might
right
not
about
at
him, and they
all.
and they
He
overreached on him. So I don't
he is
think that's going
coming
to
in from a
happen.
weird situation.
Right. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is the possibility because he wasn't one of those top end prospects. Like, we're a lot more confident in, the top 4 backs that were selected in the draft because they were highly touted prospects for more than 1 year and they had great seasons and played at big school. So I can't guarantee. That's my issue with Harvey, is I just don't know if it's going to translate as well. And I think he has a good floor of being a solid 3rd down back in this offense and being a pass catcher, but maybe you're looking at a early career Austin Eckler before he was, their 3 down back, but more when Melvin Gordon was still there and Eckler was more of the 3rd down back in that type of offense. I think that's what you could be looking at for Harvey. That's at least the most likely scenario, in my opinion. I don't think the most likely scenario is for him to come out as a 3 down back long term.
Right. So how do you explain Harvey's age?
What do you mean?
I mean, he's 24, and
Right.
I think there's somewhat of an explanation to it in terms of he's an older prospect. He went to a few schools, ended up at UCF, and he had a pretty bad ACL injury
Right.
too.
Mhm.
But he was able to stack up a lot of production through
Mhm.
his years, and eventually now skyrocketed up draft boards and ended up going in the second round. And I think as a 24-year-old running back, most NFL draft prospects are 21, 22 years old. You're not really seeing a 24-year-old guy. And I mean, we had COVID year and everything like that just kind of changed the way that we have prospecting in general, where age used to be one of the most crucial things that NFL scouts were looking at. And it was really important to getting just youth on your rosters. And now we're looking at a 24-year-old guy who, with developments in kinesiology and just like player health and safety, like you can take a guy that's a little bit older now and just hope that as a running back, he makes it through his first contract. And you don't necessarily need more than that. When you're looking at building an NFL team, you don't necessarily need
I
something
mean,
past a rookie deal. I don't think that's what they're planning on using Harvey for. I think they're going to use him for his first deal and then bring in a new running back.
I don't know if you can predict it that far. He hasn't even played an NFL snap yet. So I don't know if we can
Well,
look at how
I
if
mean,
he's
but
going to play out
he's
his
24 years old. We have to account for that. He is less valuable than if he was in dynasty fantasy football. He is less valuable than
yes.
if he was 22 years old.
Right, and that's why you'd have to consider taking some of these other receivers, tight ends, even other, running back or running backs over him in that spot. But let's move on to our next back here. And that's probably the guy who's in the same tier. A lot of people have been going back and forth between RJ Harvey and Kaleb Johnson out of Iowa. And I think Kaleb Johnson's a really interesting player because I do really like what he can bring in redraft. And I think he could be underrated as a rookie because people might not know about him. He goes mid to late third round to the Steelers, doesn't get that second round draft capital like you're hoping. You have a guy like RJ Harvey going ahead of him. But he lands with the Steelers, who don't have a running back because Najee Harris left. They have a third down running back with Jaylen Warren, who's going to handle all of the third down snaps and also most likely get some carries in this offense. But you have to assume that Kaleb Johnson's going to come in and take over the Najee Harris role, which is why I like him in redraft because I think from day one, he'll be a productive guy in fantasy. He's going to be safe. He's going to be somebody that you can rely on to give you. If you need 10 points every week, he'll be that guy. I just don't know if the ceiling is that high. We talked about it before, but I don't know why his ceiling will ever be higher than what Najee's ceiling was in Pittsburgh. And Najee's ceiling, he had one really good year, and that was his rookie year with Ben Roethlisberger, and he caught 75 passes and also had a 3-down role. And I just don't see Kaleb Johnson, with his lack of receiving upside as a player, ever having that role. And it's just pretty tough to be a productive fantasy running back if you can't catch the football.
I know Kaleb Johnson ran in like the 4.62, I think,
It was
range and
four,
the
five,
in the
seven.
40. 4.57. Okay, he
Yep,
ran a 4.57 at the 40. I think he plays a lot faster than that.
that's
I
true.
think he genuinely is faster than that on the field, and I think he's going to bring something at the next level. And this is the kind of guy that is going to get the biggest rushing share out of all the guys that we're talking about, where you can expect probably from day one, Kaleb Johnson is going to get 70% of the carries in this offense. I mean, there's just no other way to go about it other than giving him the ball. He's going to be a great volume guy for Mike
Mhm.
Tomlin, where the top running back on his roster is just going to get a ton of carries. So I would expect, you know, 230 carries at least from Kaleb Johnson this year, if not more. And so it's going to be up there. I mean, he's going to be averaging a lot of carries. He's going to be getting, 17 to 20 carries, I think, in a lot of
Ugh,
games where
I don't know if we can
they
assume
just
that
have
off
to
the
give him the ball.
rip.
They have a great defense. Like, that's just how they play football in the Steelers. And
No,
so
but I'm
I don't
just
know how
saying,
many carries they go.
I don't know if he'll come out day one and be getting 20 carries. Like Jaylen Warren's a good back, and Kaleb Johnson's a
Well,
third round
right.
pick.
Jalen Warren will get up there. So it's gonna be interesting. I think Kaleb Johnson will supplant Jalen Warren, though, immediately as the primary running back on first and second downs.
I think he will too, because Jaylen Warren's not that good as a running back. But like Kaleb Johnson, also, I don't think is anything that special. I did the film
How many
breakdown
carries
on
did
him
Najee Harris have
a lot. He got fed. He got fed when he was in
last
Pittsburgh,
season?
especially
He
when
had
he was the only guy there.
263. So
His
I would
rookie year,
expect he had 307 his rookie year. He had
right?
263 last year. I would
Mhm.
expect Kaleb Johnson to get 230 carries this year.
I just don't know if I can rely on a third round pick to get that many carries. Like Najee Harris is a first round pick. He has way better draft capital than Kaleb Johnson has.
But that's totally like you're comparing completely different things. Like Najee Harris is a player that was drafted 4 years ago in a totally different landscape with different running backs in the class. Like Kaleb Johnson is his own player, his own athlete coming out of Iowa who has an incredible background. I mean, he competes in terms of production with Najee Harris in college. Kaleb Johnson was very, very,
Yeah,
very good at Iowa. So I think that he will come in and be a lead running back in this room. But I mean, like you said, he's not going to catch that many passes, so he might not be that good for fantasy. And we have to see Aaron Rodgers come in is a very important thing here, where if Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback of the Steelers aren't going to be good. And Kaleb Johnson's value is going to come from touchdowns. It's going to come from Aaron Rodgers leading him down the field and Kaleb
Yes,
Johnson scoring 10 to 12 touchdowns on the season.
correct.
That's what's going to make him fantasy relevant if he can do that, because we're not going to see a lot of catches and we're not going to see too many yards if this offense isn't very good either.
Right. That's my point, though, is that I don't at least believe. That's why I said I like him in redraft, because I think if they get Rodgers for 1 year, then they
Right.
could be a good offense and he could score a lot of touchdowns. But in Dynasty, I don't know how good he's going to be. I don't know who the Steelers are going to get at quarterback, assuming they go another. Even if they don't hit the 9-8 mark, I don't think they're going to be bad enough to get one of the elite quarterbacks. And it's like, I can't see him being any better than Najee was. And maybe he could be a little bit better in terms of his rushing ability. But let's say you average 75 yards a game or
If
80
he's as
yards a
good
game.
as Najee was if he's as good as Najee was, though, that's probably a hit, you know?
Probably, but I think that there's other guys in this range that could be really good receivers. Like, you have first
Yeah,
round
maybe.
receivers. You have first round
Right,
receivers
right.
going
That's
around
that's
him.
true for sure. I would definitely take Kaleb Johnson later than those receivers that have a chance to
Right.
be a high-end, wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1 potential in the future.
Right. That's what I'm saying. A lot of people right now would have him as, after that top tier of guys, have him as the top guy in the next tier over any of those other first round receivers, even Burden, other guys like that, any of the tight ends. So I like Johnson in the fact that he's safe. And like you said, he has the guaranteed volume. So if you're looking for a guy who's going to score you solid points, who can get you 18 carries for 75 yards and he'll get you a touchdown maybe every other week, then yeah, you're getting like a solid 10 to 15 points pretty much every single week, which is pretty solid. But that'll be, a mid to low RB2 majority of seasons, which is exactly my point in that I don't think that his upside is as high as some of those other players in that range, and why I would go for those guys, because if you're talking about the hit rate around those players, like you've mentioned before, it's a lower hit rate and I'd rather shoot for upside.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like it.
Let's move on now to our next running back. We're going to go a little bit deeper in the pool now to the fourth round on day 3. Bashal Tuden gets drafted in the fourth round to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Tuden is an electrifying player. He's very fast. Really, a lot of people started to figure him out after the combine. He really took off there, especially with just his overall quickness around and comparatively to the other running backs. But I think this just means the end of Travis Etienne here. Etienne, this is his last year on his contract. He did not have a good season last year. Honestly, I used to be a huge fan of Etienne, and last year he just looked awful. Like, he just looked slow as a player. He's not reading the field very well. He was not able to break tackles, and maybe he's a little bit hurt, and he was hurt last year, but unless he has a really big resurgence of a season, I still don't see him coming back to the Jaguars. I think Tank Bigsby is going to be the guy in between the tackles, and Tuden's going to come in, be the third down guy. I know you're with me on this one, but what do you think Tuden's ceiling is as a fantasy player long term?
Tutin's ceiling is very high, actually. I definitely I oh, yeah. I think Tutin's ceiling is extremely high. I think he has definitely a low floor, because I think they could go out there,
Of
the
course.
next season and draft another running back in case Tutin doesn't hit, because he might not be a good player, but his ceiling is screaming to me. I mean, this is one of the best ceiling plays in my eyes in the draft. I think I'm getting Tutin everywhere in the mid to late second rounds of these dynasty rookie drafts, because the way that I view Tuden is, like you said, Etienne is headed out the door potentially, and Etienne is a credible back that I think that he's supplanting. And like you mentioned, injuries were a bad part of Etienne's career, where maybe he might have a resurgence, but it's not going to happen in Jacksonville. And the thing that I love is this coaching staff coming in, taking a guy who's got burners, who can bring the speed to their offense. They have Travis Hunter now. They've got Trevor Lawrence. They've got Brian Thomas there. It's going to be an awesome offense to watch. And then with Tank Bigsby over the middle, I'm excited for Tuten to come in and be able to be a change of pace back. And I think that's going to bring some fantasy value, where I think he could get a few catches every game. And then if he's, got some Devon Achan in him, then maybe he could be really, really good for fantasy football.
It's crazy how Devon Achan is the new player, the new receiving back of this era right now in
Yeah, I
fantasy football.
guess
Because
we have
it's
to talk about
because
it.
it's like Gibbs is
Well, he's
more of like an
small.
all-around back now, so you can't even consider
Yeah,
him as like the
and you can't
receiving
compare
guy.
people to Gibbs. He's just too good.
Right, exactly. So I like it though. I think, like you said, he's a small back, very fast. He has good hands, and with this Jaguars offense that's really evolving, you have an offensive minded guy in Liam Cohen who just gets hired and picks him. So all the signs are pointing to that. It's again similar to Harvey. I don't know what the ceiling is of him as a player. Is he going to be just a third down target on this offense, which in PPR leagues, that's really solid, but that doesn't ever really yield a long-term starter and somebody that you're confident in on a year-to-year basis for a championship team. Because I think right now Bigsby looked really good last year. He, definitely had his
Yeah.
fair share of issues with having some fumbles and the little injuries that he picked up, but as a running back, he looked really explosive, and I think they're pretty set on him being the guy on the inside. And I think Tuden now is going to be that guy on the outside and in out of the backfield running routes. So I think if you're looking for a high, honestly, you said low floor. I think he has a high floor long term, but I think
Really?
low ceiling long term.
I mean, I think Tuden could just not be that good of a player. I mean, he
Well,
comes out of well, he was out of
yeah,
Virginia Tech, right?
yeah,
So,
but
I
that's
mean,
any player drafted round 4 or later. That's any day 3 player that
right.
has a
Well,
really low
that's what we
floor.
have to recognize, though. I mean, we don't want people getting the wrong idea where it's the floor is nothing because he could genuinely not even make the roster. I mean, I doubt
Well,
that he gets cut, but it's if 4th and 5th round guys end up getting cut, like, that happens all
yes,
the time. So,
it would be
I
shocking if that
like Tuden.
happened.
I'm a big fan. Yeah, I mean, it'd be a little shocking, but
If a
I
4th
don't
round pick
expect I
got
mean,
cut, that's shocking.
I could never see Tuden getting more than 40% of the carries. So,
Right, and I think that would be high of anything.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. If Tuden's getting 40% of the carries and then he's getting, a 11% target share, like, he would be really, really good for fantasy.
Yeah, he would definitely be a lot more intriguing of a flex option if that
Yeah.
happened with that upside,
Totally. A
but
decent flex, yeah.
yeah, but let's move on now to our next running back, and that's Cam Scatabo, who was a really polarizing prospect. Played a lot of years in college, was on that Arizona State team that made it pretty far in the playoffs. They lost to Texas, but Scatabo comes in. He has all the production you want out of a running back. He had 1,500 rush yards last year. He had a ton of touchdowns. He has the confidence to say he's the best running back. He also had about 50
He
receptions
carried
last year.
ASU.
So he literally carried ASU. And so he gets drafted 4th round to the Giants, which I think is a little disappointing that he didn't get that at least round 3 draft capital. But I don't really like Tyrone Tracy that much. I wasn't that impressed with him as a running back. I think they used him a lot last year because he was young and he was better than Devin Singletary. And I think he could be utilized a lot in the receiving game because he was a former receiver. But I think it's pretty obvious to most people that Scatabo, at least at some point in the season, is going to take over as the main back between the tackles. I mean, he's just that bruiser back. He can break off any tackle. He can stiff arm. He can truck. He can do everything. And his quickness is definitely going to be a question mark in the NFL. Like, how elusive is he going to be against NFL defensive talent? But he proved at the college level that he can dominate. And I just would find it shocking if at least some of it didn't translate to the NFL level.
Yeah, I mean, you called him polarizing, but the way that I see it is I feel like everyone that I hear says they love Cam Scatabo,
But he
like
went fourth
everyone
round.
is
That's what I'm saying.
right. That's
Right.
okay. Yeah, that's the thing. He did go 4th round, but maybe that has to do with, the running back class just being deep. And in a different year, Cam Scatabo could have easily been viewed like a, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and just goes really much, much higher than just because it depends on the running back class's strength. But I think this is a great landing spot for Scatabo. This ends up looking really well to pair with a Tyrone Tracy and to let Tyrone Tracy, pull back because Cam Scatabo really can be the leader of this. I'm not too excited about Cam Scatabo because I really just think that this offense just still worries me. And
Oh,
with
yeah.
Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart, like I'm just not very excited for what Cam Scatabo is going to bring, especially this year. Like this year, I think it's just going to be really rough for him. We might see it year 2 where Cam Scatabo is kind of at the end of the year finally able to figure out his place in this offense, and then they can run him just go crazy with him year 2 and year 3. And that'll be if Cam Scatabo is the guy that we saw at ASU, because Cam Scatabo is a 4th round pick, but he's very different from Tootin, where I think the floor for Scatabo is a lot higher because I
Oh,
think
yeah.
he's a more all around running back. And he's going to get on the field. He's going to get himself on the field. I would be way more surprised if Cam Scatabo got cut than Tootin, where Tootin
Yes.
might not find a way onto the field. Cam Scatabo is going to. We just have to find out how much fantasy value is that going to bring for us. And so I don't think it's going to be anything very high year 1, maybe down the line. So I'm looking at him as a value in rookie drafts. hopefully later on, if he's behind ADP, I would definitely be looking for him. I'm not really looking at him in redraft leagues, but I think he's an exciting player.
I think there's a little bit more upside than you might give him because I do like him as a receiver. I know we've
Just don't
argued
know.
about the Kaleb Johnson, Cam Scatabo, who's a better receiver, but he did catch 50 passes
Yeah,
last year and
he can do it.
he had some big time receptions. So even though Tyrone Tracy was a receiver in college, I think you can still bet that Scatabo, if he is just a really good player, that they might just want to keep him on the field. And who knows? Two
Yeah,
years from now, let's say they're both good players. Maybe Tracy leaves and they run with Scatabo as a third down running back. It's more of just, do you
Tracy
actually
can move
believe?
around too.
Right. It's like, do you
They
believe
can
that
put
he
them both
has the
on.
talent to be a three down back? And I think he is one of those
I don't
players
know.
that you could get at this range where he does have three down back potential, as opposed to guys like Tudin or Jaden Blue, who we're going to talk about next, or just other
This is
guys that
definitely true.
are really
Yeah.
good players, but they're really good at either receiving or just rushing, as opposed to as opposed to both. So I think that's where he does have the upside to be that type of player. And if we saw Tracy go down with an injury, all of a sudden we see Cam Scatabo. Maybe he's a third down back in this offense that has Brian Dable. They're going to put up points, at least hopefully, with Jackson Dart. So I think
Meh.
he is. I think this offense and this
Maybe.
Giants team as a whole is going to be very exciting to watch. Would you not agree?
I would not agree. I'm not excited at all, actually. I think it's gonna be gross football. I don't think it's gonna be very good, and I don't know if Cam Scatabo is gonna bring any fantasy value. I think he can be their starting running back. I think he can be their three-down running back, everything that you're saying. I just don't think that's gonna amount to much, and we'll see once we get down the line, but this year, with Russell Wilson and
Russ is
Jameis
a
or
yeah.
Jackson Dart, and they still have a sucky wide receiver core. They only have one. I think they only have one wide receiver. I know you like Wandell, and they're actually solid. Wandell and Darius Slayton, those guys are solid, like number 3 wide receivers, I
Yeah.
guess. But
No,
I
I
don't
I
know.
would have
I'm
I
not
would
a
have liked
fan.
to see them step up with a tight end in this draft and take one of those really good guys, because there was a lot of depth at tight end in this draft, getting guys in the second and third round. And I don't really like Theo Johnson. I like the
Yo, I have to
receiver
roll
core
with
if they
him.
have a good tight end, but let's just be honest. We all know that you're a little salty on the Giants still because Neighbors ended up being better than Rome. So we don't
No,
have to
it's
talk about
Russell
that.
Wilson, bro. I just can't I can't support wherever Russell Wilson goes. Like he's a dunce, bro. He's an idiot. Malik Neighbors is still gonna be inconsistent, guys. I know we're talking rookies right now, but you're all over him. But Neighbors is just gonna be inconsistent until he gets a quarterback, and that's all I was trying to say.
Yeah, I'm sure. Hey, everyone who had him last year, I'm sure you were real upset with the production that you got. But let's move on now to our last running back of the day. We're going to talk about Jaden Blue, who is my personal favorite player in this draft. I liked him before he even got drafted to the Cowboys, which is obviously a dream scenario for him. Blue profiles as a electric receiving back. He might have the best agility out of
He's so
any running
fun.
back in this draft class, including any of the guys that went first and second round. He is going to be a nightmare to tackle in the open field. Now, the question is he going to be a one-dimensional player? Is he only going to be a is he only going to be a third down back and be able to catch passes out of the backfield, which is valuable,
Yes.
but similar to Tudin, who we just talked about, he comes in with this fifth round capital. It's like a third down running back isn't that valuable in fantasy, but he is just so explosive. And I can just imagine in my head how the Cowboys will use him with Dak Prescott and the lack of explosiveness they currently have in the offense and with their current running back room. And you pair him with Phil Maffa, who they also drafted, who is more of like the bowling ball running back. And I
Oh.
feel like they, in their eyes, kind of have this backfield figured out with Blue as the third down guy and Maffa maybe as, the first and second goal line back. And I think that Blue is a better player than Maffa and could, in the long term, eat into some of those carries.
Yeah. Phil my fucking fantasy points. Let's go. I like his name, man. Phil Maffa. Let's go. But Jaden Blue is exciting. I loved him coming out too. He was one of my favorite guys to watch just film wise because of what he's capable of down the field as a running back without the ball in his hands, because he can run routes really well. And that's going to be exciting. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys end up having to throw him in the slot because they just don't have any receivers right now to go with CD.
Hey,
So
Amari
like,
Cooper, maybe we'll see.
yeah, something like that. So they gotta move Jaden Blue around. That's where what's gonna bring fantasy value. If Jaden Blue is gonna bring fantasy value, it's gonna be the receiving game. It's gonna be out there because he needs snaps. more than just the third downs that you're talking about, more than just because even like I'm a little bit worried about his pass blocking. Like Javonte is a really good pass blocker. He's going to be in there to block for them. So we have to get the pass blocking upgraded a little bit for Jaden Blue, and we have to make sure that he's used in different ways out on the field to be able to bring fantasy value in the receiving game. So who knows? Maybe we see Jaden Blue slot wide receiver or slot running back, whatever you want to call it. But they got to find a way to pair him with Javonte Williams. And hopefully, you're hoping that when you draft Jaden Blue, that they continue their stupid trend of not taking any running backs and not bringing anyone in because they think they're good. So that would be the best for Jaden Blue if they don't bring in another running back next year. But that's what scares me the most, at least for Jaden Blue.
Well, it just depends how well Blue plays. Because again, his ceiling
I don't
might
even know if
only
that's
be
necessarily true, though. He's a 5th round running back. Like they could easily just bring in somebody else next year at a higher draft capital or a free agent. Like I don't trust it.
At this point, I'm not too worried about the draft capital. If he has a really good season, I'm confident that they're going to run with him next year. If he's not that good or he's only good on the third down, then
What's
I
a
think
really
they'll
good
bring somebody
season?
else in. What's a really good season? If he had 60 catches or 50 catches, I think that would be a really good season for him. Would that not?
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty good. That still might not bring too much fantasy value though, and they still might draft a running back even if he has that many catches.
They might draft a running back, but I don't think they're going to be drafting a running back to take away his role. I think that he'll always have his role as the third down running back. And who knows? Injuries happen. You
Okay.
try to preserve players throughout the long season. If he's a good player, I'm confident that he'll get touches. And when you have the third down role locked up, you know you're getting the value points, the receptions, and maybe
Yeah.
he doesn't get that many carries, but maybe he gets 4 to 5 and he picks up an extra 20 rushing yards on the game, and that's an extra 2 points per game, which is huge.
Okay. I can get on board with that, I think.
Yeah, so I think with Blue, I am just in a belief of the talent. I think at Texas, a lot of people are going to question the production that he had, but you forget he was in the same running back room as Bijan one year, Jonathan Brooks 2 years ago. Last year, he split with Quinn
Yeah.
Wisner. Like, they have a lot of talent, similar to Bama, where when Josh Jacobs got drafted, he wasn't even the starter. Like, that just
Yeah, that was
happens at
crazy.
some of these top end schools where they just have talent coming in year after year. And sometimes just because they're the backup or they're splitting touches, it doesn't mean that they're not a good player. Similar to this year with Travion and Quinchon. We know they're both great players, but they both had to split touches because of how elite they both are. So I think that Blue has a really good opportunity with the Cowboys and to fit in very well with this offense. And I think that, if you're looking for a guy with high upside, high explosiveness, which is always looked on favorably in the NFL these days, I think Blue can be your guy in the anywhere as early as the mid second round in rookie drafts.
Woo. All right.
I think
I'm about it.
at that point, you're kind of shooting darts anyways. So at that point, why don't you just go for the upside, right?
All right. Right.
All right. Well, that'll end off this episode of the Fantasy Brains podcast. We really hope that everybody enjoyed. And we know we didn't get to every single running back today, but we will be posting a ton more rookie content, a lot more overall fantasy content as we get in here for the summer. Like I mentioned in our last episode, we're going to be starting our 32 team series where we go over every single team and basically predict what we think is going to happen to them for the season. Different shares of fantasy points going around. It's all going to line up exactly. So definitely make sure to tune in and hear our predictions for your team and your fantasy players next season. Again, make sure to follow us on all of our social medias at LeatherBrainz and especially on TikTok and YouTube, the LeatherBrainz podcast. We'll see you next time for some more great NFL draft rookie content, and we're out.
3, 2, 1.
Got a blast!
Thanks for checking out the Fantasy Brains. Don't miss next week's episode, Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. See you next week, Brainiacs.